Until I was around 25, I lived in a small beach town. My neighborhood was only about a 20-minute walk from the shoreline. If I'm being honest, nearly 80% of who I was came from that beach life. I had been surfing since before I could even properly talk. It was completely normal for me to shake out a pair of shoes and see sand spill onto the floor. That was just my everyday reality. My two closest friends, let's call them Armand and Chuck, were loud, confident, and naturally charming. At the time, we were all 18, and like most guys that age, we were completely distracted by girls. It was a Saturday night in late May, just a few weeks before school was about to end. Senioritis had fully taken over. By then, my friends and I were constantly testing how far we could push things without actually getting into trouble. We already had our college acceptances, even with COVID disrupting everything, so high school didn't really matter to us anymore. That night, Armand and I had plans. We were meeting two girls from school we'd been getting close to, Sophia and Fran. The idea was simple: pick them up in the evening, drive out to a quiet beach, lay out some blankets, open a few bottles of wine, and just enjoy the cool ocean air under the stars. It sounded perfect. I want to be clear, I don't support drinking and driving at all. But at 18, I wasn't thinking clearly. I was careless. I pulled up to Sophia's house a little after 9. She and Fran came out of the house, almost dancing toward the car. It was obvious they had already been drinking. Armin and I exchanged quick, excited smiles. This was going to be a good night. Instead of taking the fastest way, I chose a scenic route to a more secluded beach. The drive took about 30 minutes. The entire time, the four of us were laughing, joking, and talking about friends from school. At one point, Fran and I got into a surprisingly deep conversation about time, death, and what it all really means. It felt intense, almost surreal. We were all completely comfortable with each other. The beach I had picked had a dirt road you could drive up. After that, there was a narrow sand trail leading down. It was steep, but I chose it on purpose. Hardly anyone went there. It was far from the main boardwalk, which meant fewer people and a clearer sky for stargazing. I thought I had planned everything perfectly. I parked as high up the dirt road as I could. We all got out. Armand and I grabbed the blankets and wine, and we headed down. I'll skip ahead a bit. After a few hours and an empty bottle, things shifted. Armand and Fran slowly wandered up the beach together, while Sophia and I walked in the opposite direction. Once we were far enough from them, surrounded by darkness and the sound of the ocean, I spread out the blanket. We lay down on it, a little drunk, staring up at the sky. Then something changed. Right before anything could happen, Sophia's body suddenly went stiff. At first, I thought I had done something wrong, but then she leaned close and whispered very softly, "Do you hear that?" I paused. I forced myself to listen carefully. All I could hear at first was the steady crashing of waves against the shore. I almost brushed it off, thinking she was just imagining things. But then I heard it too. It wasn't loud. It wasn't clear. It sounded like a faint whirring noise, almost like a small engine running somewhere nearby. The strange part was that it didn't stay in one place. The sound seemed to move. One second it felt far away, the next it felt closer. I couldn't tell where it was coming from. And suddenly, the peaceful beach didn't feel peaceful anymore. Then the sound slowly disappeared, like it had never been there at all. It's nothing. I told Sophia, trying to sound confident. Honestly, I just wanted to go back to what we were doing. And that's exactly what we did. A few minutes later, I reached over and grabbed my shirt from the sand. I shook it out and pulled it back over my head. That's when Sophia suddenly screamed. I spun around so fast my heart jumped into my throat. She was still lying on the blanket, but her arm was raised, her finger pointing straight up. I looked toward the sky, but saw nothing except darkness. Confused, I moved closer to her and lowered myself to her level to see from her angle. And that's when I saw it. The moon was glowing in the sky, and directly in front of it was a small, dark shape. A drone. It was hovering right above us. It stayed there for a few seconds, perfectly still, almost like it was watching, recording. Then, without warning, it shot straight up into the night sky and vanished. Everything clicked at once. That strange whirring sound we heard earlier, that was 100% the drone. I felt stupid for not realizing it sooner. But that feeling quickly turned into something worse. My stomach dropped at the thought that someone had been watching us the entire time. I looked at Sophia, and I could see she was thinking the same thing. She covered her face with her hands and started crying. I tried to calm her down, telling her it was going to be okay, even though I didn't fully believe that myself. "We need to go back to the car," I said. We walked quickly through the sand and made it back up the path. Armand and Fran were already there. The second they saw our faces, they knew something was wrong. I explained everything, the noise, the drone, how it had been hovering above us. They just stared at me, completely shocked. The fun energy from earlier was gone. It felt like the air itself had changed. We got into the car. I started driving toward Sophia's house. No one spoke at first. The silence was heavy. I tried making small talk to lighten the mood, but it didn't help. The girls admitted they didn't feel safe going home yet. It was a Saturday night, so staying out late wasn't an issue for me. I asked if we could hang out at either of their houses instead. They both shook their heads. Their parents would never allow it. My house wasn't an option either. Same with Armand's. Then I had an idea. I told Armand to call Chuck. Chuck's house was huge and his parents were incredibly relaxed. If there was any safe place to go, it was there. Luckily, Chuck picked up and he was free, relieved. I pulled into his driveway and parked. Armand, Sophia, and Fran got out and started walking toward the front door. I told them I'd be there in a minute. I stayed in the car. I needed a moment. I hadn't shown it, but I was shaken. My hands were still slightly trembling. I leaned my forehead against the steering wheel and closed my eyes, taking slow breaths. After a few seconds, I actually started to feel a little better. Then, almost without thinking, I grabbed my phone. I hadn't checked it since everything happened. The screen lit up. There was only one notification. I stared at it. I blinked once. Then again. My entire body went cold. The message on my screen read, IRTAG FOUND MOVGYTU. All the fear I had just pushed away came rushing back at once. We were literally being tracked. The words didn't even feel real in my head. I forced myself to move. I jumped out of the car and started inspecting every single part of it. I checked the front bumper. Nothing. I looked inside the grill. Nothing. I rushed to the back of the car. Still nothing. Panic started building. I opened the doors and searched inside. I checked under the seats. I flipped over the floor mats. I even searched the trunk. There was nothing. By this point, sweat was running down my neck. The hairs on my arms and legs felt stiff. My breathing got heavier. I dropped down onto my hands and knees and slid partially under the car. If someone had hidden something, it had to be underneath. I slowly moved along the driver's side. When I reached the tire, I began feeling around inside the wheel well, and that's when my fingers touched something. There it was, an air tag. It was taped securely to the inside of the wheel well. If I hadn't known to look for it, I would have never found it. It was placed perfectly. I stared at it in my hand for a few seconds, trying to process what it meant. Then anger took over. I threw it onto the driveway and crushed it as hard as I could, smashing it into pieces. Whoever had flown that drone over us at the beach knew exactly where we were. Suddenly, standing alone in Chuck's driveway didn't feel safe at all. I grabbed one of the broken pieces of the AirTag and ran to the front door. I told everyone what I found and showed them the shattered pieces as proof. Their faces dropped. The girls looked completely horrified. They quickly checked their phones, and they had received the same notification. Chuck was especially furious. If we had been tracked, that meant whoever planted it now knew where he lived. After the initial shock settled down, we all agreed to stay inside. We spent the rest of the night in Chuck's basement and ended up sleeping there. A couple of weeks passed. Nothing happened. Slowly, we convinced ourselves it was over. We tried to believe it had just been some creep who wanted to spy on young adults at the beach and scare them by tracking their car. It was disturbing, but at least it hadn't gone further, or so we thought. About 3 weeks after the beach incident, on a Sunday morning, I got a call from Chuck. He was yelling into the phone, telling me to get to his house immediately. I didn't ask questions. I just drove. When I arrived, he was standing in the driveway, holding something in his hand. His expression was serious, almost pale. At first, I thought he was holding papers. But as I got closer, I realized they weren't papers. They were photographs. I took them from him and looked carefully. They were grainy and dark, clearly taken at night. But there was no doubt about what I was seeing. They were pictures of me and Sophia on the beach that night. Even though the lighting was poor, you could clearly recognize us in very revealing positions. My stomach turned. I felt sick. I immediately thought about Sophia and how she would react if she saw them. Not knowing what else to do, we called the police and explained everything: the drone, the AirTag, and now the photos. They listened, but they told us there wasn't much they could do. We insisted they at least check the photographs for fingerprints. Later, they contacted us again. The photos revealed nothing, no usable prints, no clues. That made it worse. Sophia was terrified that whoever sent those pictures would try to blackmail her. I had the same fear. The entire experience was traumatizing. It changed the way we looked at everything. Thankfully, nothing else ever happened. We believe that involving the police may have scared whoever was behind it. But things were never quite the same after that. Sophia was distant around me. I could feel it. And honestly, I couldn't blame her. Even now, I still think about those photos, and I can only hope they never resurface later in my life. My best friend Ricardo and I were both 19 years old. I know it may sound a bit fancy, but both of us came from wealthy families living in North Jersey, and every summer we got to spend time near the Jersey Shore. My house was in Belmar, New Jersey, while Ricardo lived in Lavallette. It was a quiet weekday night during summer. Ricardo was driving us from my home in Belmar toward his place in Lavallette, a drive that usually takes about 1 hour. To be honest, I liked hanging out at Ricardo's house more. Not just because his place was a little nicer, but also because Lavallette had a better vibe for people our age. If we were not looking around for parties, we would sometimes just grab drinks and sit on one of the many private beaches we were technically not allowed to be on. I could talk a lot about fun things to do down the shore, but I'll stay on track and get to the main story. While driving, we decided that tonight would be different. No parties, no late night adventures, no usual crazy fun, just a peaceful night. The plan was simple: buy a few beers, roll a joint, and relax on a quiet private beach under the night sky. Honestly, it felt perfect. We had been partying hard lately with friends, so a calm night was badly needed. For people who don't know Lavallette's layout, there are two main sides: the beach side and the bay side. Most beaches there have tall sand dunes, and when you walk toward the ocean, the land suddenly drops down. If you stand near the water and look back, you will see a big hill of sand behind you. After having a few drinks at Ricardo's house, we took 2 bikes from his garage and started riding toward the beach we chose. For some reason, Ricardo wanted to go further than I had ever gone before. I didn't really understand why, because all the beaches looked almost the same to me. Still, I didn't mind the longer bike ride, so I just followed him. Finally, Ricardo stopped at a very lonely looking beach at the end of the road. There were no cars parked nearby. All the houses on that street had their lights turned off. I actually liked this place. Back then, weed was still illegal in New Jersey, and we didn't want to get caught. Also, we had some drinks with us. Even though we were only 19 years old, we hid our bikes under some bushes and slowly walked toward the beach. The 2 of us lit our joint and started smoking under the open night sky. The only sounds around us were the soft waves hitting the shore and the slow movement of the wind. The beach stretched endlessly on both sides. The sand felt cold and soft under our feet. As we kept drinking, we became more and more relaxed, laughing, talking, just enjoying the moment. After some time, we both lay down on the sand and looked up at the sky, hoping to see a shooting star. That was when we heard something. I noticed it first. At first, it was almost impossible to hear. It sounded like a strange metallic buzzing noise. It was similar to the sound of large overhead lights humming inside a big gymnasium. I honestly cannot explain it better. It was just a weak metal, like buzz, something that should not exist on a quiet beach at night. I slowly sat up and looked at Ricardo. I could tell the exact moment he heard it too. We both quickly turned our heads in different directions, trying to see into the darkness and find where the sound was coming from. The problem was that we could not tell the exact location of the noise. It was too soft, too distant. Fear started growing inside us, but we were too scared to move. We kept thinking that whatever was making that sound would eventually disappear and we could just stay hidden and safe. There was almost no chance that anyone could see us where we were sitting. It was extremely dark, and the ocean waves were loud enough to hide any small sound we made. I know this may not sound very scary, but my heart was beating extremely fast. It felt like it was about to jump out of my chest. The strange drone sound kept going, and after a few more minutes, Ricardo silently signaled me to follow him. I slowly nodded. Leaving the beach was clearly the best idea. Then something terrifying happened, like a scene from a movie. The exact second we both stood up, the buzzing sound suddenly jumped from level 1 to level 5 in intensity. It was not a slow increase. It happened instantly. I had to use all my strength to stop myself from screaming in fear. The strange buzzing sound suddenly grew louder in just a split second, and now it was clearly coming from our right side. I felt the hair on the back of my neck stand straight up. Fear rushed through my body from head to toe. We kept staring into the darkness, but still could not see anything. However, now the buzzing sound felt extremely close to us. Instinctively, we started running toward the sand dune. I did not even know what we were running from. All I knew was that something was seriously wrong, and that something or someone was chasing us. When we were about halfway toward the dune, I suddenly felt Ricardo grab my shoulder tightly and pull me back. I stopped running instantly. At first, I was confused. Then I saw what he was looking at. I slowly lifted my head toward the top of the dune. And that was when I saw it. There was a dark human-like figure standing completely still on the top of the dune. Its arms were extremely long, almost reaching down to its knees. The figure was incredibly tall. I was shocked by how it could stand so still without moving even slightly. It was terrifying. Ricardo suddenly shouted at me, breaking my focus from that horrible sight. We started running again, this time moving sideways along the beach. We reached the next entrance to another dune and quickly sprinted up the sandy slope. When we finally reached the top, we turned around and looked back at where we had come from. I can still remember what I saw next. It was even more terrifying than before. Not only was the dark figure still standing on the dune, but now I could see maybe 3 or 4 more similar figures standing silently on the slope below. Each one of them looked like they were facing directly toward us. We didn't have time to go back for our bikes. We decided that running straight home was the safest choice. The next morning, we went back and tried to follow our path again. But we could not find those bikes anywhere, not even a single trace of them. Maybe someone stole them, or maybe whatever was watching us that night had something to do with it. Either way, I have never felt that level of fear on a beach before. Even today, I still cannot properly explain what happened that night. The strangest part for me is that I never figured out what that buzzing drone-like sound actually was. And to this day, I have never heard anything even remotely similar to it again.